Star Wars is one of the most popular franchises of all time. Generations of people have been following the stories of the galaxy far, far away since it all began on May 25th, 1977. The reason it has resonated so long in the hearts of fans is because of the passion and creativity put behind the concept by George Lucas and many talented people who have been involved with over the last 46 years. What seems like an action packed sci fi story about space wizards and rebellions, in its core, is actually a story about the love between a father and a son, and the concept of a found family. The primary conduits of this story are Jedi, an ancient order of monks who are able to wield and influence the Force. Everyone has heard about the Jedi at some point in their lives. They are known for being the keepers of peace in the galaxy and are the main narrative point to the Star Wars franchise, but that all began to crumble at the hands of the looming threat of the Sith and rising Empire. But was this always destined to happen? Now, there are a lot of moments that led to the defeat of the Jedi, so it's hard to just handpick a few. It happens over thousands of years, and it wasn't just one single moment that led to it. But I believe it all began back during the Rule of Two by Darth Bane. When Bane implemented this Rule of Two, he knew that the Sith were their own worst enemy, and he knew that the Jedi was a formidable foe and a growing power within the galaxy. So this led to him deciding to have not only just one, because one would take all the greed and the power of the Sith for themselves and not pass it on in case anything happened. Also to have two, one to rule and teach, and the other to learn and overcome. With this rule of two, it lasted for thousands of years. But one of the problems that this had for the Jedi is that honestly, they started to underestimate their enemy. They started to lose focus and sight in their enemy, the Sith. And eventually, this led to the events all the way up to the Phantom Menace, where they were shocked to see that the Sith were back. And even prior to then, rumors of the Sith circulated, but they failed to believe it and they failed to investigate it, not wanting to face the reality that their longtime enemy may be resurfacing. Another problem that the Jedi had that they decided to build a Jedi temple above a Sith shrine. In their eyes, the only way to overcome this evil is by replacing it with good, which is a fair concept in itself. I'm sure the Jedi have their own reasonable decisions for doing this. As Sidious is able to point out himself, because the Jedi did this, they were blinded by the true actions of the Sith and their role throughout the galaxy. They were so blinded that they allowed Palpatine, who they did not know was Darth Sidious, into the Jedi Temple, and he was able to be there in their presence without them sensing who he truly was and what his true intentions were. Another problem that the Jedi had throughout their long run was losing sight of their true purpose. Of course, that happens to anyone in any faction over time. The Jedi were meant to be peacekeepers, but as that began to go, they joined more into politics. They started to have a hand in the political schemes, and instead of choosing to do good above all else, they decided to do what was best for just the galaxy. And although that might sound like a great concept, in reality, it really put the Jedi further behind their teachings. They decided to pick and choose which battles were worth their time. They even allowed slavery to exist in the Outer Rim and allowed the rise of the Hutt cartel and other factions to be outside those areas as well. It is not like the Jedi didn't know this was happening, but it was the fact that the Jedi allowed this to happen in order to prevent things from happening elsewhere. They decided to choose where their battles will be. In the end, that tunnel vision led them to losing sight in their true purpose. Another problem that the Jedi had, without realizing it, was oversaturation. See, the Jedi, they had a good purpose with it. They believe the more Jedi they have, the more they can help the galaxy. But this is true. There's always going to be those bad apples in the bunch. For example, in the Clone Wars, you had those like Jedi Master Krill, who purposely used the dark side of the Force for their own gain. But he wasn't the only one. Over the long history of the Jedi, there have always been those who have sought and went out to seek the dark side of the Force. However, as we got to see during the High Republic, the more Jedi there became, the more of a problem it became. Because the Jedi were so caught into their own belief system, they also neglected the things around them. Kind of going into what I said about them losing sight of their true purpose, the Jedi failed themselves before they failed the galaxy. The perfect example of this is what happened to Ahsoka Tano. After she was framed for treason and murder, the Jedi easily took the side of those against her without putting much effort into finding out the truth. For Ahsoka, this was a wake-up call for her, but not only for her, for the audience as well. Of course, they were at times of war, which is very important, but that's the problem in itself. Why were the Jedi at war? Why were the Jedi actively participating in this war? Instead of being within the war as now generals, they should have just only focused on the humanitarian portion, the relief effort, helping the galaxy, not leading it one way, not being a part of a political faction. Overall, I say all this to say, even though the Jedi did eventually fall, thousands of years of peace and Republic expansion took place before the birth of Anakin. The Force itself, which guides the galaxy, is not all light or dark. It is a balance. The fall of the Jedi was inevitable, and the fall of the Sith and the Empire was just as timely, as Anakin had a pivotal role as well. Even when the Emperor lived, there was still hope in the galaxy. As a troubled Luke Skywalker, despite how you might feel about his betrayal in the sequels, in the end, he was still able to help restore peace into the galaxy and trust the future of the Jedi in Rey. And as long as there is still trust in the Force somewhere in the galaxy, there will always be a new hope.